Hi, I'm Don from dondroneson. A few weeks ago, Transport Canada announced new drone-related fees and new certification levels related to flying drones beyond visual line of sight. I did a video about that, and many of you submitted feedback to Transport Canada as a result. Great job. Well, on June the 10th, TC held a conference call with stakeholders to explain what they were up to and to answer our questions. Let's see how that went. On May 19, 2021, Transport Canada published this document called Transport Canada's Fees for Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems Beyond Visual Line of Sight. Now, despite its name, the proposal also includes doubling the fee for regular drone registration, creating new fees for SFOC applications, and introducing a variety of new drone certification changes. I encourage you to watch the video I published about the proposal. There's a link up there. And if you haven't already done so, read the document and send in your feedback to Transport Canada. The deadline is coming up. It's June the 20th, 2021. The email address to send the feedback is in the description below the video. There were about 40 people on the 1-hour consultation call, including these 6 folks from Transport Canada. It was a professionally done call. It started on time, they kept to the agenda, and we finished on time. And everyone who put up their hand with a question was heard, and good discussions took place. Alex Shahid started by walking us through a summary of the proposal, and I'll cover some of the key points he raised. By the way, they said they would publish the slide deck from the event, but I haven't seen that yet. I'll add a link to the description below the video when they make the slides available. Alex started by explaining the scope of the proposal and the fact that it covered 3 areas in addition to the actual fees. Expansion of the VLOS regulations for heavier drones, the introduction of rules around low-risk BVLOS operations, essentially flying beyond visual line of sight in uncontrolled airspace over sparsely populated areas. And finally, the notion of localized BVLOS. Now, to most of us flying drones, these localized BVLOS rules are the most interesting. This stuff basically means that advanced certificate pilots will be able to fly for periods of time without being able to see their drone, around buildings, for example, or while doing follow-me automated missions. Okay, what I mean is that we'll be able to do this legally soon. Check out my previous video with the results of my little survey. Frank Berzabahati confirmed that anyone with their advanced certificate already would be grandfathered for these new set of localized BVLOS activities with no additional exam or fee. And Tom Hasty stated that no additional drone technical specifications were required for this localized BVLOS stuff. He did slip in there a comment that flying over or near people would not be permitted, which means we would need to stay 30 meters away from bystanders. Regardless, both of these confirmations are great news for advanced certificate holders. More freedom to fly what most of us already recognize as safe operations. A question later on in the session led to an interesting comment from TC that flight review procedures will likely be updated a bit to reflect the localized BVLOS element in some way. Alex further spent some time explaining the factors that went into the fee increases that are being proposed. Again, if you're interested in the details of these fees, please watch my previous video or read the document. One little surprise they dropped in, which was not in the written proposal, is that once the fees were in effect, they would be adjusted for inflation annually, based upon the Consumer Price Index. They finished off the presentation with a high-level view of how things would roll out over time. The next real step is a formal pre-publication of the revisions in the Canada Gazette 1 in the fall of 2021. This is where all the fine print will be revealed. It will be followed by another round of consultations like this one, which will culminate in the regulations becoming law at some point after that, presumably in 2022. The last half of the session was Q&A. 13 questions were tackled by the TC team, mostly with pretty decent and direct, clear answers. Some were a bit more vague, however. We need to look more into this kind of responses, including to my question about why certain operations still needed SFOCs, and Steve Bannister's question about experience-based exemptions instead of the mandatory ground school requirements of the new RPAS operator certificate. Apparently they're looking into these issues, and answers were promised in the Canada Gazette 1 publication. Another interesting topic Steve brought up was the feasibility of the RPAS operator certificate for smaller operators, given that you're expected to have chief pilots and a safety management system and all sorts of things like that. Frank B's response was that TC would not actually expect anything like a 400-page manual for a small operation. Essentially, he said, the expectations scaled with the size of the drone company. Bigger organizations would be expected to have a more thorough and detailed procedure set than a mom-and-pop organization. It's reasonable, but a bit vague. The final question was from Reese Abel, probably the youngest participant in the event. Great to see him on the call. He remarked on how little public awareness there was of the drone regulations, particularly with young drone pilots like him. And I agree. TC has really dropped the ball on awareness campaigns, particularly with regard to cooperation with retailers. Why isn't a one-page summary of the rules mandatory with every drone sale in Canada? Or at least a link to my YouTube channel? Why is this so difficult? Well, there we have it. A quick summary of the consultation session Transport Canada hosted on June the 10th. If you haven't already done so, please get your feedback on the new fees and certification requirements into TC by June 20th. Again, the email address is in the description below this video. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped. Safe and happy flying.